Imagine standing on the brink of fate, surrounded and outnumbered, knowing your destiny is sealed. This wasn't merely a battle. It was a pivotal moment in history, a crucible where legends were forged and one man, General George Armstrong Custer, would meet his ultimate downfall. Once hailed as a Civil War hero, how did Custer find himself facing a tragic end on the dusty plains of Montana? Welcome to an in-depth exploration of one of the most iconic and polarizing events in American history, Custer's last stand at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Together, we'll unravel the myths and examine the man who became both a symbol of American ambition and its consequences. By the end of this video, you'll see not only the man, but the decisions and forces that led to his infamous demise. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button for more raw, thought-provoking insights into history's defining moments. It's June 25th, 1876. The searing winds of summer sweep across the vast Montana plains. The air hums with tension, the soft rustle of grass under General Custer's boots foretelling the catastrophe ahead. At the heart of this unfolding drama stands Custer, surrounded by nearly 700 men of the 7th Cavalry, all brimming with confidence, certain of another victory. But they are marching into a storm that will forever alter how history remembers their leader. Custer, the golden-haired general of the Civil War, had built his reputation on daring strategies, flamboyant displays, and an insatiable thirst for glory. Every battle for him was a stage, with himself in the starring role. Yet, on this day, amidst the towering banks of the Little Bighorn River and facing thousands of Lakota Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors, that hunger for fame would seal his fate. As the battle begins, the cracks in Custer's once unshakable confidence begin to show. His decision to split his forces, a bold but perilous strategy, proves disastrous. He sends Major Reno to attack from the south while leading his own men to strike from the north. On paper, it was a plan of brilliance, but it crumbled under the weight of a fatal misjudgment. Unbeknownst to Custer, the native forces were not a fleeing enemy, but a united and determined force of thousands, led by the indomitable Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. They weren't running, they were ready to fight. The illusion of invincibility that had carried Custer through so many victories shattered as his men faced an overwhelming and relentless onslaught. The thunder of gunfire was drowned out by the sheer numbers of warriors descending upon the cavalry, creating chaos and panic. Trapped and surrounded, Custer found his familiar tactics, those that had brought him triumph in the Civil War, woefully inadequate. This was no orderly battlefield of disciplined lines and calculated maneuvers. It was guerrilla warfare at its fiercest, fought by native warriors who wielded intimate knowledge of the land and a relentless will to defend it. The battle spiraled into unrestrained chaos. Custer's men fought desperately, not for victory but for survival, as they were overwhelmed by the ferocity and sheer numbers of their foes. In his final moments, as the inevitable drew near, what must have passed through Custer's mind? Was it regret for his choices or terror at the devastation unfolding around him? We may never know, but what we do know is this. The man who lived for glory met a tragic, ignominious end. By the time the dust settled, Custer and his entire force of 210 men lay dead, a stark symbol of overconfidence and miscalculation. The Battle of the Little Bighorn was not just a defeat, it was an obliteration. How did Custer, once the celebrated boy general of the Civil War, come to this disastrous end? Many point to hubris, his unyielding confidence in his own abilities, his refusal to wait for reinforcements, and his profound underestimation of the native forces. Others see his failure as a reflection of the broader military and cultural mindset of the time. The U.S. government and military viewed Native Americans as obstacles to be subdued, not as capable and determined adversaries fighting for their survival. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, this battle was far more than a military engagement. It was a fight for their way of life, their land, and their families. On that day, their unity and strategic prowess proved superior to the firepower and arrogance of the U.S. Army. The aftermath of Little Bighorn saw Custer's legacy evolve into legend. Some remember him as a tragic hero, a fearless leader who fought to the bitter end. Others see him as a reckless, glory-seeking officer whose actions brought senseless death to his men. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Custer was a man of his time, shaped by the frontier, the belief in manifest destiny, and the arrogance of a nation bent on expansion at any cost. His death marked the last significant victory for Native forces against the U.S. government and foreshadowed the violent retaliation that would lead to the eventual subjugation of the Plains tribes. Today, Custer's last stand endures as one of the most debated episodes in American history. Was he a victim of his own ego, or a pawn in a battle that no one could have won? What remains undeniable is the enduring legacy of this event, a cautionary tale of hubris, bravery, and the devastating cost of conquest. The Battle of the Little Bighorn stands as a reminder of the human lives lost and the complex history that continues to shape our understanding of the American West. If you're drawn to the drama, myths, and untold truths behind history's pivotal moments, be sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover the stories that resonate through time. Custer's last stand is just the beginning. What creates a man like George Armstrong Custer? How does a boy from Monroe, Michigan, rise to become one of the most controversial and celebrated figures in American military history? The answer lies in a confluence of ambition, timing, and America's relentless westward expansion. George Armstrong Custer's rise to fame did not begin on the plains of Montana at Little Bighorn, but on the blood-soaked battlefields of the American Civil War. There, a brash and almost recklessly confident young officer forged a reputation that could not be ignored. To understand how Custer became the legend he is today, we must journey back to his roots. Born in 1839 in New Rumley, Ohio, Custer's early life was far from extraordinary. He hailed from a modest background, far removed from the power and privilege of elite society. Yet even as a boy, Custer's restless spirit burned brightly. He yearned for something greater, more excitement, more recognition, more adventure. His small-town life and humble beginnings were never enough to contain his boundless ambition. When he arrived at West Point, however, he was hardly a star pupil. Infamous for his pranks and defiance of authority, Custer graduated at the very bottom of his class, more notable for his audacity than his academic discipline. When the Civil War erupted, Custer saw his chance. For him, this wasn't just a conflict, it was a stage, and he was determined to play the hero. By the age of 23, Custer had achieved what few could claim, a promotion to brigadier general, making him one of the youngest in American history. The press dubbed him the Boy General, and despite his youth, Custer captivated those around him. At Gettysburg, he became a legend, charging in a battle with his golden hair streaming behind him and his elaborate, almost theatrical uniform gleaming in the sunlight. His men admired him not merely because of his rank, but because of his audacious courage. He led charge after charge with such daring that some saw him as a hero, while others questioned whether he was utterly reckless. Custer's genius lay in his understanding of war as a performance. Each battle was a role to play, each charge an act in the drama of his life. During the Battle of Gettysburg, he led his Michigan Cavalry Brigade against J.B. Stuart's formidable Confederate forces. With saber held high, he shouted, "Asterisk, come on, you Wolverines!" Asterisk, and plunged into the enemy lines in what many considered a suicidal attack. Yet the gamble paid off. Stuart's cavalry was turned back, and Custer cemented his place in the annals of history. But what fueled this man? Was it pure courage, a thirst for glory, or something more profound, more consuming? For Custer, war was not merely a series of strategic maneuvers. It was a pathway to immortality. Every decision he made, every battle he fought, was an opportunity to etch his name into history. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to be remembered. This obsession shaped his persona. From his signature long hair and flashy uniforms to his carefully crafted public image, Custer was acutely aware of how he was perceived. He manipulated the media of his time, sending self-aggrandizing reports to newspapers to ensure that the public viewed him as a fearless and heroic figure. The press obliged, feeding the nation stories of his bravery and larger-than-life exploits. Yet, Custer's relentless pursuit of fame came at a cost. His hunger for glory often led him to make decisions that endangered his men. He was not a leader who exercised caution. Instead, he charged headlong into danger, indifferent to the consequences. While his men admired his courage, some whispered doubts about his judgment. Did his desire for personal glory cloud his ability to make sound decisions? For Custer, the answer was irrelevant. He wasn't seeking the approval of his peers. He was chasing immortality. By the end of the Civil War, Custer had achieved the fame he so desperately craved. He was a celebrated figure, a household name, and a symbol of audacity and charisma. Yet with the war's end, Custer found himself adrift. The conflict that had made him a legend was over, and the spotlight began to dim. But Custer was not one to fade quietly into obscurity. When the U.S. Army turned its attention westward to the so-called Indian Wars, Custer saw his next opportunity. He threw himself into the campaign with the same daring and recklessness that had defined his Civil War career. But the battles of the West were unlike anything he had faced before. These were not grand, gallant engagements fought in orderly lines. They were brutal, desperate conflicts over land, survival, and the relentless march of American expansion. Custer may have envisioned himself as the hero of this new frontier, but to many, he became a far more ominous figure, a symbol of unchecked aggression, a man willing to annihilate entire peoples in the name of progress. Yet, undeterred, Custer pressed on, driven by the same insatiable ambition that had propelled him from obscurity to infamy. He continued to master the art of self-promotion, portraying himself as the valiant commander standing firm against the so-called savage forces of the plains. Custer understood the power of narrative and knew exactly how to captivate the public's imagination. For a time, his storytelling worked. By 1876, as he led his troops toward Little Bighorn, Custer was no longer the bright-eyed boy general of the Civil War. He was a man fighting to maintain the glory of his youth, navigating a web of political and military rivalries, including powerful enemies in Washington, D.C. Yet, deep down, Custer believed he was destined for greatness. As he rode toward the Lakota and Cheyenne villages that fateful day, his mind wasn't solely focused on the battle. He was envisioning the legacy he would leave behind. He imagined this victory, his asterisk victory, cementing his place in history. What he could not foresee, however, was the deadly trap awaiting him. But then, that was the essence of Custer's life, a grand performance destined to end in tragedy. Custer had spent years crafting his legend, meticulously shaping how he would be remembered. In the end, it was that very legend, his relentless pursuit of fame and glory, that led to his undoing. He was not just a man. He was a myth, a larger-than-life figure embodying the contradictions of 19th century America. Brave yet reckless, honorable yet vain. A hero to some and a villain to others, Custer's story is a powerful tale of ambition, glory, and the immense cost of chasing immortality. So, how should we remember George Armstrong Custer? Was he a hero or a fool? A visionary or a reckless egotist? That is for each of us to decide. What is undeniable is that Custer didn't merely live in history. He made history. His name endures as a symbol of the complexities and contradictions of American expansionism, ensuring that his story, for better or worse, will never be forgotten. If this deeper look into Custer's life has drawn you in, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating insights into the people and events that shaped history. Remember, history isn't just a collection of dates and facts. It's the compelling stories of individuals who brought it to life. And trust us, there are many more tales to tell. Custer's journey wasn't simply about military campaigns. It was a story of transformation. His hunger for glory collided with the brutal realities of war, shaping him into the figure history remembers today. In 1861, as the nation fractured in the throes of the American Civil War, a young, Eager Custer, freshly graduated from West Point, stood on the cusp of his first battle. While war terrified most, for Custer, it was exhilarating. Amidst the chaos of smoke, blood, and cannon fire, he found his calling. For him, war wasn't a trial to endure. It was a stage on which he could shine. Custer began modestly, serving as an aide to General George McClellan, carrying messages and observing from the sidelines. But even then, his boldness and enthusiasm stood out. McClellan quickly recognized Custer's potential, and the young officer wasted no time proving himself. In 1863, during the Battle of Aldie, Custer seized his moment. This seemingly minor skirmish became a defining event for him. Leading one of his first cavalry charges, Custer galloped headlong into Confederate forces, saber raised, rallying his men to follow. The chaos of cavalry combat, rearing horses, gunfire, and the clash of sabers, was a nightmare for most, but for Custer, it was pure exhilaration. Where others hesitated, he charged. Where others saw defeat, he saw a chance for glory. His audacity paid off as the Confederate forces were repelled, and Custer tasted the thrill of his first major victory. From that moment, his rise was meteoric. By the time Gettysburg unfolded in July 1863, Custer was already a known name. At just 23 years old, he had been promoted to brigadier general, commanding the Michigan Cavalry Brigade. His swift ascent was nothing short of extraordinary, and when the critical moment at Gettysburg came, Custer proved he was no mere flash in the pan. On the third day of battle, Custer faced off against J.B. Stuart, the Confederacy's legendary cavalry commander. Stuart's plan to strike the Union rear and pave the way for Pickett's charge could have changed the course of the battle. But Custer wasn't one to wait passively for the storm to come. As Stuart's forces advanced, Custer made the audacious decision to countercharge. With saber drawn, he led his Wolverines straight into Stuart's lines, shouting, "Asterisk, come on, you Wolverines!" Asterisk, the scene was one of chaos and carnage, but Custer's boldness turned the tide. Stuart's attack was repelled, and the Union position held firm. This moment secured Custer's place as one of the war's most daring commanders and cemented his reputation as a fearless, if reckless, leader. Yet even at the height of his success, there was a shadow to Custer's glory. His determination to achieve immortality, to be remembered at all costs, often came at a price, one paid by those who followed him. He wasn't the kind of leader who played it safe. His gambles, though sometimes successful, carried immense risks, and his men often bore the brunt of his ambition. For Custer, war wasn't just about tactics or strategy. It was about carving his name into history. When the Civil War ended, Custer's future seemed uncertain. The conflict that had made him a household name was over, and the nation was moving on. But Custer wasn't content to fade into obscurity. The Indian Wars in the West offered him a new stage, a chance to recapture his glory. Yet, these battles were different, grittier, less about honor and more about survival. While Custer may have viewed himself as a hero, many saw him as an agent of destruction, a symbol of American aggression toward the native peoples. Still, undeterred, Custer charged forward, driven by the same relentless ambition that had defined his career. With his golden hair flowing like a banner and his saber gleaming in the sunlight, Custer shouted the now legendary words, "Asterisk, come on, you Wolverines!" Asterisk, in a heartbeat, he spurred his horse forward, charging headlong into Stuart's cavalry. The collision was ferocious. Horses screamed, sabers clashed, and the air thundered with gunfire. But Custer's audacity paid off. Stuart's advance was halted, and the Union line held firm. Gettysburg ended as a decisive Union victory, and Custer's role became pivotal in its triumph. Custer wasn't just a soldier. He was a showman. He understood that war wasn't solely about tactics or strategy. It was about image. Every battle was his stage, and he was the star. His uniforms, flamboyant and custom-made, shimmered with gold braids and vibrant colors. His long, golden hair was meticulously maintained, completing the image of a knight from a bygone era. To some it seemed absurd, but to Custer it was essential. He knew that appearances mattered, not just to the press or the public, but to the men he led. Custer's soldiers idolized him, not merely for his rank, but for the larger-than-life persona he cultivated. He led from the front, his courage unwavering, always at the head of the charge, inspiring his men with his fearless presence. He asked nothing of them that he wouldn't do himself, and that earned him their loyalty. Even in the face of impossible odds, Custer made his men believe they could achieve the impossible. But beneath his bold leadership lay an undeniable truth. Every battle was not just a fight for victory, but an opportunity to etch his name into history. Custer's hunger for glory came at a cost. His daring, while often effective, was also perilous. His relentless charges and refusal to retreat frequently put his men in harm's way. At times, his bravery bordered on recklessness, leaving some to question his judgment. Was he leading his men to triumph, or was he sacrificing them at the altar of his ambition? This question loomed large during the Battle of the Wilderness in 1864. Fighting through dense forests and suffering heavy casualties, Custer, true to form, was at the forefront. Yet, the chaotic terrain and unrelenting enemy fire turned the battle into a bloodbath. His men were ambushed, many falling in the confusion of the forest. Though Custer survived, as he always seemed to, his bold tactics came at a heavy cost. Despite the whispers of discontent among the ranks, his commanders continued to praise his valor, and his reputation only grew. Custer's fame was not only forged on the battlefield, but also in the newspapers, where he became a household name. Tales of his bravery, his daring charges, and his triumphs were retold with fervor, often embellished by Custer himself. An expert in self-promotion, he ensured that his name was synonymous with heroism. In the age of the telegraph and the press, he understood the power of narrative and wielded it to craft an enduring legacy. The public adored him, embracing the image of the boy general who had helped preserve the Union. Yet, as the Civil War ended, Custer faced an uncertain future. The stage on which he had built his legend was gone, and the country was moving on. Custer, however, refused to fade into obscurity. He dabbled in politics, business, and even memoir writing, penning My Life on the Plains, which painted him as a heroic figure in the Indian Wars. But his attempts to maintain relevance fell short. The public's interest waned, and Custer, ever craving the limelight, sought a new stage. That stage came in the form of the Indian Wars. The West offered a fresh frontier, a new canvas on which to paint his legacy. But this was no Gettysburg. These battles were not about gallant cavalry charges or battlefield heroics. They were brutal, relentless campaigns against Native American tribes defending their land and way of life. To Custer, the West was another chance to prove himself. Yet, to many, he symbolized the darker side of American expansion, a relentless force of aggression willing to destroy entire cultures in the name of progress. By 1876, as Custer prepared for his campaign against the Lakota and Cheyenne, he was determined to reclaim his fading fame. He believed victory on the plains of Montana would restore his reputation as a hero. But the confidence that had carried him through so many battles would lead him down a perilous path. As he led the 7th Cavalry toward Little Bighorn, he envisioned another triumphant chapter in his storied career. What he failed to see was the trap waiting for him, a reckoning that would not only end his life, but forever alter how history remembered him. At Little Bighorn, Custer was the same man who had charged fearlessly at Gettysburg, the same man who had thrived in the chaos of battle. But this time, his bravado would not save him. This time, he faced an enemy he could not outflank or overpower. The Native American warriors he encountered were not fleeing, but standing united, prepared to defend their land with a ferocity he could not match. The Battle of Little Bighorn was not just a military failure. It was the tragic culmination of a life spent chasing glory. It was a moment where heroism and hubris collided, and the price was paid in blood. Though Custer's name would live on, immortalized in legend and controversy, the question remains: was he a hero whose courage defined an era, or was he a man whose ego led to his own demise and the deaths of his men? If this exploration of Custer's life, his Civil War heroics, and his fatal quest for fame has intrigued you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's defining moments. History is more than dates and events. It's about the people, the choices, and the stories that resonate through time. Custer's story is one of triumph and tragedy, of ambition and recklessness, and of a man whose legacy remains as complex as the times in which he lived. Legends are not forged in victory alone. Sometimes they are born in defeat. And in the case of George Armstrong Custer, his name endures, a testament to both the man and the myth. Though his body fell on the plains of Montana in 1876, George Armstrong Custer's legend soared, evolving from Civil War hero to an enduring figure in American mythology. June 25, 1876, was meant to be another chapter in the relentless westward expansion of the United States. A day when the U.S. Army would strike a decisive blow against Native American tribes resisting their forced removal from ancestral lands. But the shocking outcome of the Battle of Little Bighorn sent ripples of disbelief across the nation. News that Custer and every man under his direct command had been annihilated wasn't just a military defeat. It was a national humiliation. The idea that a celebrated war hero, the boy general of the Civil War, could fall so completely to what many Americans perceived as a ragtag band of savages was unfathomable. The government scrambled to explain the debacle, the press erupted with sensational accounts, and the public struggled to make sense of the tragedy. In this maelstrom of confusion and emotion, the myth of Custer began to crystallize. The media of 1876 played an outsized role in shaping the narrative, much as it does today. News of Custer's death didn't merely spread, it exploded, captivating the nation. Quickly, the story of Custer's last stand evolved from a crushing defeat into a tale of heroic defiance. Newspapers and artists glorified Custer as a tragic hero, a man who fought valiantly to the bitter end against insurmountable odds. Through their eyes, Custer became the embodiment of the American frontier spirit, a symbol of courage, determination, and the sacrifices made in the name of progress. This transformation wasn't accidental. It was carefully orchestrated. Writers like Frederick Whitaker, author of The Complete Life of General George A. Custer, elevated Custer to mythical status. Whitaker portrayed him as a fearless leader who had devoted his life to his country, ultimately perishing in a noble, albeit tragic, defeat. The American public devoured these accounts. In an era grappling with the brutal realities of the West, violence, broken treaties, and the displacement of native tribes, Custer's story offered a palatable narrative. He was celebrated as a martyr for American expansion, his death framed as a sacrifice for the greater good of the nation. But the truth was far more complex. To fully understand Custer's legacy, one must confront the darker aspects of his story, his role in the Indian Wars. While the media lionized his death, Custer's actions leading up to Little Bighorn painted a more troubling picture. After the Civil War, he became a central figure in the U.S. Army's campaign to subdue the Plains tribes, enforcing a policy of westward expansion that displaced native peoples from their lands. In the years preceding Little Bighorn, Custer led numerous brutal campaigns against the Lakota Sioux and Cheyenne. One of his most infamous actions occurred during the 1868 Battle of Washita, where his 7th Cavalry attacked a Cheyenne village, killing over 100 people, including women and children. Custer justified these actions as part of his duty, but they were emblematic of a broader strategy to crush native resistance through overwhelming force. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and other tribes, Custer was no hero. He was an agent of destruction, a symbol of the relentless American incursion into their lands. This context is what made Little Bighorn more than just a military victory for native forces. It was a moment of justice. For the tribes who had suffered under Custer's campaigns, his defeat was a powerful reversal, a moment of triumph against a man who had brought so much devastation to their people. Perhaps the most significant architect of Custer's myth, however, wasn't a writer or journalist but his wife, Elizabeth Libby Custer. After her husband's death, Libby dedicated her life to preserving his legacy. Through her books, including boots and saddles and following the guidon. Libby portrayed Custer as the quintessential soldier, brave, honorable, and deeply devoted. Her writings highlighted his humanity and loyalty, casting him as an idealized figure. Libby became a tireless advocate for her husband's reputation, attending memorials, giving speeches, and fiercely defending him from critics who questioned his judgment or labeled him reckless. Libby's efforts were instrumental in ensuring that Custer's name would be remembered as a martyr rather than a failure. Yet her portrayal glossed over the harsher truths of his career, his role in the violent displacement of native tribes, and the costly decisions that led to his men's deaths. For Libby, Custer was perfect, and she shaped the public's perception to reflect that ideal. By the early 20th century, Custer's legacy was firmly entrenched in American consciousness, further immortalized by Hollywood. The 1941 film They Died with Their Boots On, starring Errol Flynn, romanticized Custer's life, presenting him as a dashing, selfless leader who sacrificed everything to protect the West. Little Bighorn was depicted as a noble stand against impossible odds, a testament to Custer's courage. Hollywood's portrayals ignored the complexities of his actions and the consequences of his choices, solidifying the image of Custer as a tragic hero. Over the decades, this heroic narrative began to face scrutiny. Historians, scholars, and Native American voices have worked to dismantle the myth, re-examining Custer's role in the Indian Wars and his catastrophic decisions at Little Bighorn. They've highlighted the violence he perpetuated and the hubris that contributed to his downfall. For Native tribes, Custer remains a symbol of betrayal and aggression, a man who led campaigns that devastated their communities. Little Bighorn, in their eyes, was not a tragedy, but a moment of resistance and justice. Today, the battlefield of Little Bighorn is a national monument, with memorials honoring both Custer's men and the Native warriors who fought there. It stands as a reminder that history is not just the story of victors. It is also the story of those who resisted, who fought to defend their land and way of life. So, who was George Armstrong Custer? Was he the tragic hero who fought valiantly for his country? The reckless commander whose arrogance doomed his men? Or a symbol of the contradictions inherent in America's westward expansion, its ideals of progress and its brutal realities? The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. Custer was a product of his time, a man who believed in the righteousness of American expansion and saw native tribes as obstacles to progress. He craved fame and thrived on public adoration, yet he also inspired deep loyalty among his men and fought with conviction. Custer's legacy is a complex tapestry of ambition, heroism, recklessness, and myth. It is shaped not only by his actions, but by the stories we choose to tell about him. As we continue to grapple with the history of America's westward expansion, Custer remains a figure of enduring fascination, a lens through which we can examine the ideals and contradictions of a nation. If you found this deep dive into Custer's life and legacy thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. History is filled with stories like this, tales of triumph, tragedy, and the myths we create to make sense of them. Stay with us as we uncover the untold truths of the past. And together, let's explore the complex narratives that continue to shape our understanding of history. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos from us. What do you think about today's topic? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found the video helpful, feel free to share it with your friends and family. We hope you had a great time. See you in the next video with even more exciting content. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.